Well, hello everybody, and welcome to the Hocus Focus January 2025 Psychic Weather. The reason for this appearing on this Beyond Room 313 channel is because I've had a very difficult time of it over the last month or so, and I've been faced with very big personal challenges that I've been trying to overcome. Having said that, I'm still here, so I wasn't able to get to Sarah and to fulfill my production uh, criteria responsibilities in order to produce the show. So I want to thank her first for doing that and getting people to step in my place and so on. And so that's why this is on a different channel. It's purely because just it was a very bad time and things went very lopsided, and I still wanted to contribute to this January show, and so here we are. Now, I'm going to give a psychic weather for 2025. I've had a lot of time to think. Now, I'm trying not to cloud my own personal experiences in the last like month or so with the future. So I've actually sat down and thought deeply about this and how I'm going to phrase it. But I think there is an emerging clarity that's coming towards the coming year. And I think the word to describe what people will have to deal with will be challenges. Challenges and the ability to keep a calm head and try to see things through in a mature manner. That mature manner will be based on not getting hysterical, not getting all whipped up by either one side or the other regarding the world at large, and also in your own life, and realize that that desire to whip you up into one way or the other without applying measured reflection is also part of this spiritual challenge we're facing. So this could be just as much the week or the year in spiritual weather as the week in psychic weather. And now, firstly, I want to talk about this time. It's been very apparent to me that a great evil has started to manifest in the world. Now, whether this is in relationship to Trump and his coming into power, and it could all stop when he's elected and so on. But this evil is creating enormous disruption. Now, this disruption is creating what the Christians call an apocalyptic type effect. Now, by apocalypse within Christianity, what that means is the opening of a goatskin a sealed document to reveal what's going on in the future. That's literally what it means, the opening of a skin. Apocalypse, it comes from a Greek word. Now, that's what's happening now. You see it in the zeitgeist as a whole, finally in Britain, regarding the certain violations against young women there that's been going on for years. There's finally momentum on that. It's happening as a result of this guy, Elon Musk, in America, who also has helped Ireland greatly by we would have had these appalling draconian hate speech laws ran through by the children who run this country, the fashionable, trendy children. That's the only reason they pass these laws, because they think they're fashionable, not because they have the intelligence to debate them, gone through. So he's kind of like a conflicting character. At the same time, too, various hypocrisies have come to the fore concerning his relationship with these visas in America. And, in despite of what they're supposed to be doing there. Now, this kind of thing will be echoed all through your life from top to bottom, because as the old Hermetic maxim goes, as above, so below. So these things that you take to myself, well, Thomas, why are you bringing these greater sort of macro political things into this? Because they will be reflected throughout. Remember, the psychic weather is like a nested Russian doll. Although you may have the big zeitgeist stuff on the outside with the bigger doll, you're still the one in the middle. And if someone throws that big doll with you in the middle off Niagara Falls, you go off Niagara Falls too with it. This is the Hermetic maxim: as above, so below. And it's one of the truest statements, philosophical statements ever issued. So what we have to understand is when these things arise, we have to apply a sense of measured thinking. And we also have to say, what am I doing that's making this worse? You may think by taking a partisan side in something that not only are you making the things worse, but you're making it worse for yourself. Okay. At the same time, when we see wickedness unfold, we have to call wickedness out. We have to name a demon a demon. It has to be done. Now, while this may seem very simplistic, it's not really. It requires a kind of like you're playing chess with the psyche. You're playing chess with the psyche. And we have seen the manifestation of evil arrive in the form of these lights that appeared over New Jersey. I was 100% vindicated on that. Your blue beam didn't happen. Your fake alien invasion didn't happen. Your psyop didn't happen. What happened was these strange, very bizarre lights appeared in the sky, just like they have at Fatima. And that was also, remember, related to World War One and the growth of communism in Eastern Europe, and particularly Russia. Mothman in Point Pleasant, and then numerous other cases all over the world, even up the road here, Knock in County Mayo. The so-called Marian apparitions are a far deeper story when you start looking into it, and that was just around the time of the famine. So or in the aftermath, but you've got to understand that again, what's in the sky is repeated on Earth. And as a student of folklore and as an alternative folklorist myself, I pay very careful attention to these events. I don't know what they are, but they are definitely a psycho-spiritual thing. They manifest, they give us warnings, portents. They sometimes seek to frighten and disturb us. They harvest energy from the air around them, and they harvest energy from our ears, from our fears. Sorry, I'm still dealing with really bad pleurisy. From our fears. And these fears are to be not, they're to be fought. And as soon as, like, I'm not saying I did it, but as soon as I and others started saying, oh, this is the whole, lights in the sky thing that appears all through history before changes in civilization, they started to vanish, and they've vanished. So there's no blue beam. You haven't had that one woman saying that Verna van Braun. We have one person for that, one, and she could have been lying. And so don't, it's all very exciting to the truthers. We're going to be destroyed by the Illuminati with Project Bluebeam and all this stuff. The most remarkable thing about these things is that they didn't have any kind of RF or any kind of heat footprint. They were completely a form of plasmatic energy that was just there, just what they were. Now also to bring a Christian thing into it, remember these. One of the terms they use for fallen angels within the sort of like Judeo-Christian canon is the falling luminaries. This is why they applied the term incorrectly Lucifer later on to Lucifer in terms of the King James Bible, but their sign is the falling luminaries. Now, what did you see over New Jersey and other places? Falling luminaries. Okay, so although I'm not a Christian myself, I'm a comparative mythologist, folklorist, as well as an a comparative mythologist and alternative folklorist, and I can see these things and how they flesh across different cultures and the different spiritual and theological traditions. So this is giving us a curtain to 2025. There's never going to be heaven on earth. That's a lie that was given to you by remember, when Buddhists talk about nirvana, nirvana doesn't mean peace and beauty. Nirvana literally means oblivion. That's what nirvana is in Buddhism. Oblivion. Complete and utter oblivion. Nothingness. It's only the hippies who think that this hippie culture, new age culture, thinks nirvana is some kind of wonderful, peaceful thing, everlasting love and stuff like that. Nirvana is oblivion. Okay. So as long as we don't have oblivion, we still have to engage in this five sense reality through our nervous system. The week in psychic weather ahead is also the week and year in psychic weather ahead, and that's going to be strangeness in abundance. Be prepared for this. I don't think I'm a bullshitter in this regard. I called out a lot of the stuff that's happened recently correctly, including things like dormant satellites would start working again, and also right before Christmas, literally there was a demonic swarm moved in on my social media, literally a demonic swarm. And I'm sure some of you have experienced this in your own life. If you work in retail, you say, who are these creatures who suddenly, what are these things that have suddenly come into our family or into our community? These are demonic swarms that are happening now to seek energy, to seek to harvest us as the year goes forward. The Renfields are very good for this because they can actually show us what's happening. So the top is Renfielding at the moment over the whole Elon Musk and other thing with Trump regarding the visa. So when they're Renfielding, you're paying attention as well. We don't know. It's early days yet. Okay, we still don't know yet. So don't think that the future is set in stone. Now, your job from this point on for next week and next month and next year is to keep a clear head about you and be amazed by these things. Don't be afraid by the differences and changes you see in the world. Like, for instance, when I predicted that dormant satellites and dormant space probes would turn on again, and two did, that didn't make me feel, oh my God, this, yeah, that made me say, okay, we're definitely in a situation that the wave function is collapsing, and we actually have a situation where relativity is in reverse. Now, this wave function collapsing is causing the skies to go purple all over the world. And don't give me this guff, oh, the Illuminati is spraying us, this is clearly coming from space. So there's definitely, and it's not aliens either. This is a change in reality, okay? Now, we in the tribes, we Forteans, as my Sarah and I both pointed out in our book, the being a Fortean, being someone who is comfortable with the paranormal, being someone who revels in the sacred mysteries, for that reason that they're mysteries alone, will handle these things and these changes much better, while society freaks out amongst us. And that's the week and the year and the month in psychic weather. Stewardship of your own psyche. Be amazed by what's unfolding. Document it. I very carefully documented all the things that happened in New Jersey for a future project and so on. Work, create, and remember, as this wave function is collapsing, your job is to grab a surfboard and or a piece of floating wood and ride it along with it, not let it drown you. And that's me, Thomas Sheridan, Hocus Focus, the week in psychic weather, and have a fun year. Have a fun, spite everything, and make sure to have a fun year. There's still plenty of roses that are there to be smelled. Take care. And now on this Hocus Focus After Hours on Beyond Room 313, I want to do my book review. It's one thing I insisted on doing, and so did Sarah. And it's appropriately a book on the tarot. In fact, it's the only book on the tarot that I think I've ever owned and kept and cherished. And the first one I read was a teenager, and I still have my original copy. And it is Alfred Douglas's The Tarot, The Origin, Meaning, and Use of the Cards, with illustrations by a guy called David Sheridan, who is of no relationship. Anyway, this book is still in print, and I absolutely loved it from the first time I read it. And I still refer to it, and I still learn so much, not just in terms of my knowledge of the tarot, but also it played a huge part in my esoteric knowledge as well, in my emerging esoteric knowledge as a young, kid, basically. And the book demystifies the tarot, and it it basically introduce it to people in a very pragmatic and useful and terribly interesting way. I think many people would have picked up this book back in the 70s in the day, would have thought, had the stereotypes of the tarot, like, the dark character in a horror film who produced the cards, and all kind of things happened there, this kind of like a great trope and staple of horror films and horror TV shows. There was other things too, like you would think of, someone pretending to be a Romany gypsy, the seventh son of a seventh son at the seaside, who would be in a caravan telling a nymphomaniac she was going to marry a doctor or a lawyer. A lot of that kind of thing. Now, the fortune telling. Now, a best way for me to review this book is what does a tarot mean to me personally? Okay, Now, the tarot to me is a book of subconscious lexicons that goes back to a very ancient human origin story, long before the actual development of the tarot itself, when humans learn to understand and dismantle, reconfigure, and also create the world around them by means of symbols and imagery. Now, the reason why they did this is this stuff came from a time before human language and human verbal and written communication was developed. Literally, the first thing would be someone would draw a shape on a cave wall in red ochre or soot and say, this represents that. And that's how ancient the tarot is. It goes right back to the mind in the cave, to use the pun of that famous book. Now, the tarot is, at this point in history, has been stabilized more or less since 14th century Italy, when it first arrived there as a board game, tarotti, it was basically not a board game, a game. Now, it was a very popular game among soldiers, and it was also used sort of like as a trick game, as a kind of a kind of a puzzle. And if you go to the military museum in Dublin at Collins's Barracks, you will see that amongst all in the Irish Confederacy Wars, and these were religious wars back in the 1500s and early 1600s, all amongst the guns and the muskets and the uniform, there is a set of tarot cards that was carried by an Irish soldier in the 1500s, both for games, but I bet you also used them for divination and these puzzles as well. And so we have a situation now where this thing has been deeply entrenched within Western society since about the 1400s in Italy, where it grew in stature and changed. Now, at some point around then, gypsies discovered it, and they may have, now, I'm not going to say discovered it because I think they may have even brought it to the West. And these gypsies then began the whole thing of the fortune telling thing, hence the whole concept of the Tarot of the Bohemians, which was one of the first early masterpieces on books written on the use of tarot in France about 200 years ago. Now, the tarot soon became a book of the West. This is what it is to me. If you look at the archetypes, say in the major arcana, you have like the emperor, who's clearly modeled. If you look on the early ones, such as the Italian tarot, the Tarot de Marseille, the Swiss tarot, is very much based on an Eastern emperor, a czar. It's very much so. It shows us that it's somehow come out of that part of the world via the Slavic world. Likewise, the Pope or the Hierophant is often portrayed very much like an Eastern Orthodox pontiff rather than a Catholic cardinal or priest. And in some of in fact, if you look at some of the cards, the sneaky characters in the foreground are often portrayed as Catholic bishops. So that's so we have the history of kind of like the division of the churches that took place, 1,000 or so years ago between the Eastern Orthodox and the Western Catholicism. On top of that, we have other mythological aspects to them, as well as things that come from Indo-European paganism. The most obvious one being the Tower card. The Tower card is being struck by lightning. Well, what's that? That's Thor. It's also Lucifer, because when the tower falls, it exposes the unbridled truth of things. That this you cannot escape it. That's why it shows the people falling with the tower. You can deny this, but it's the tower is people fear the death card. The real card to be worried about is the tower card. That's the real one to be worried about. And but it's also a card of opportunity. That famous joke in The Simpsons where Lisa says that the Chinese word for crisis and opportunity are the same thing, and Homer goes, "Crisis-tunity." That's exactly what it's like. And so it's a think of the area is now clear to now begin a new foundation moving forward. So it's a cleansing card as well. It's incredibly destructive, but there's Thor. That's what Thor represents. He's chasing Loki across the sky. Sorry, Thor is the god of thunder. Loki is the lightning flash. My mistake. As is Luke, which comes from the Indo-European word Luke, which means a flash of insight, unbridled honesty, the tower And there's other cards too within the major arcana. You have the concept of natural law suggested by justice. You have the concept of balanced living, balance, harmonious. Is an alchemical card, very much so in the temperance card. You have the judgment card, which is a card to calling, a card of calling. You have my favorite card of them all, the star. And there you have the woman at this, the sadness is over, the badness has broken, the tower has fallen, and we can now have we're starting to develop that. Say we survived. Okay, things are bad, but we survived. And what she's doing is she's taken the aqua nostra, the new water of alchemy, from the pool while a nightingale sings in the background and a solitary star shines in the sky behind her. Very much an Eastern type image of star, very much more Eastern in the kind than in the Western esoteric tradition. The stars are very much in the star of the east, the star of the morning. It's Lucifer in the aspect of where the tower is Lucifer in the aspect of the unspoken truth, and no matter how damaging it is. The star is also in the morning in the eastern star of the star card. It's Lucifer saying, well, look, now you know who really loves you. Now you know who really cares about you. Now you know what you can survive. Let's begin a new day. And this kind of thing. You also have the separation of male and female at the Wheel of Fortune. As Jung said, when the clock strikes midnight, it falls into the lunar feminine aspect away from the male solar aspect. Now, a lot of the people say, well, the darker cards are on the female side. Not necessarily. They're more pragmatic than dark, a lot of them. It's really think of the feminine side is a wise grandmother saying, now you behave yourself. Think of the feminine side as being more like that than something punishing you. And it always ends with the sun and then eventually the completion of the universe or the world, depending on the deck you use. So that's what it is for me. And it doesn't solve problems directly. I solve the problems, you solve the problems. It doesn't guarantee a future of. It tells me to be wary of this and to work towards this. My seven card spread that I've developed, I think, is the ideal one because I think any less than seven cards, you're not getting enough information. And some of these things they have that the Celtic cross spreads are absolutely ridiculous. 24 cards. You can't That's just a mess. You can't tell anything from that. And you definitely need more than three cards. Definitely. And you certainly can't tell anything just on one card because any more than a novel can be read by just reading one page or one chapter. So I think I found the seven card spread with a significator at the top being the primary one, the negative cards on the left hand side, or the past on the left hand side, the positive and actions on the right hand side, the three cards coming down the other side. And this will give you focus. It never lets me down. It gives me a plan. It allows me to see. This is the beauty when you take out something out of the linguistic world and you look at in the world of symbolisms, it allows you to see things from a different angle. It's like having, a friend or a therapist in your pocket. It's like, well, hold on, is there another way to see this? If this ties very much in with the psychic weather, where I was saying, don't jump to conclusions, have measured thought. It will serve you very, very well going forward. So the same thing, is this what I need? Okay, what do I have to do? And if you get negative cards, bite the bullet and get ready for them. You'll at least have the fortitude to do this. And this is what it's about. It's not about hope, because hope is a word that means nothing. It's about action. So when someone does a tarot reading for you, they're not saying, okay, here's, that whole joke of like the person that gets a bad reading and the person goes, deal the cards again, the bitch. And it's like, no, it's not like that at all. This is a working framework. This is almost like a plan to help you think and go forward. And this is why I think it's better to read your own cards than have someone read cards for you. There's anything wrong with that. I just prefer that if I can read the cards, I know the depth of the problem. Because no matter who you are, if you go to a professional tarot reader who's the best one in the world, you're still hiding things from them that only you carry deep inside you. This is why I think everyone should learn the tarot. And I think the best book that did it for me was Alfred Douglas's book. It has never been equaled. Not only do you get a great insight, the hippie art is terrible. That's the only thing I don't like. But we're not using his cards, David Sheridan's cards. My favorite deck is still the Rider Waite. I have the illustrated one, and I have a beautiful Italian gilded version of that, which I've been using quite a lot. And I've used that one when I've gone through deep crisis because it's now charged with that superpower. So this book talks about the significance of numerology, the significance of, say, what Crowley's work in the Tower of Praise, a very big connection on his thought deck between astrology and the tarot. I don't know a lot about astrology, and I've come to the conclusion I probably never will. I've nothing against it, but that's for other people who are experts in that field to help me with. Wherein the tarot is where I belong. This is where I belong. And I don't necessarily, like I said, do divination. I use this as a way of seeing things differently, and I still have free will, and I still function within the domain of natural law. And so it talks about symbolism, and then we have the the minor arcana and the four suites, and these are sort of like, think of them as like subtleties that set themselves around the major arcana. So you might have a chapter of a book that say the High Priestess. Well, other cards that fall in a reading, think of them as subheadings or subchapters relating to that. And this is what makes the tarot a very interesting thing. I do believe that they were brought here from India by gypsies. That's where the gypsies came from, and the majority of gypsies that entered into Europe came from a place called Taro in India. That's the name of the place, Taro. And they were the ones most greatly associated with the cards in the olden days and right up until the present. So the tarot, that's my recommendation, is Alfred Douglas' book. You've heard me talk about it before. I can't say it enough. The new version is fine. They haven't changed much on it, and it's actually better because it's a slightly bigger volume, so it's easier to page through. And so that's my book review. That's my sort of brief introduction to the tarot. And make friends with the 78 cards. That's the way I can say, because I can guarantee you it's in my life it served me well, and in your life it'll serve you well too. And you don't have to become some kind of academic expert. There's nothing wrong with getting a card and not being fully sure of the meaning, and either going online. There's a very good site called the Tarot Guide that's online, or I'll go to this book, or make your own little book. That's what I did, and and consult the meanings, because no one knows everything right away and memorizes everything perfectly. And you're not supposed to either, because changes and fluxes in society and in consciousness affect how you approach the cards anyway, like they're supposed to. So take care, and I'll see you next time.